You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday presented, of course, by DraftKings. Thank you to all of you that use the code Ross, whether it's on the DK Sportsbook app or the DraftKings app. Maybe you want to get into that best ball draft with me, Joe Dolan from the Fantasy Feast. Even those of you that used it on the DK Horse app last week, I very much appreciate that as well. Just code Ross. How about the wisdom today coming from a guy whose social media handle is Solomon's Wisdom, longtime colleague at SiriusXM, NFL Radio, the great Solomon Wilcots. You know, we always record a bunch of interviews at the Super Bowl. This was one of them that we thought could kind of stand the test of time because of the subject matter, including talking about Mike Tomlin and the Rooney Rule and what it was like for players back in the 80s and 90s. Pretty timely with the Mike Tomlin news. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
You know, I haven't had a chance to talk with my next guest for a while. I hear him in the morning sometimes on SiriusXM NFL Radio, Channel 88. Has, by the way, one of my all-time favorite social media handles, at Solomon's Wisdom. I'm talking about the former Cincinnati Bengal. Obviously, everybody hears him on SiriusXM NFL Radio every morning. A longtime broadcaster, played in a Super Bowl against the Niners, so you know a little bit something about that. Check him out on social media at Solomon's Wisdom. I actually have a bunch of things I want to get into with you, Sally, but I want to start with this. What do you have going on with Dr. Chad Hansen, knee cartilage repair using your own cells? Because I'm fairly confident, especially in my right knee, that I'm going to need that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's a lot of us ball players. And obviously weekend warriors, roughly about 12 million people going to their doctor every single year, sort of complaining about some kind of knee pain. About half of those people end up having some kind of cartilage damage. Well, what if I told you there was a treatment where they could use your own cells, your own stem cells, to grow and repair your cartilage damage, to keep you from deteriorating and becoming bone on bone, for instance. And it's called MACI. And MACI is a procedure where they go in and they pull out the healthy tissue. They put it on a collagen membrane. They literally grow it, and then they go back in and reinsert it. It adheres to the healthy tissue and to the bone, and voila, you have healthy cartilage. And so it's a real innovative treatment. It's been around for over 10 years, and it's been approved for the knee only, but ages 18 to 55. So we're here to tell people about that. Dr. Hansen's going to be joining me here on Radio Row a little bit later in the day.
Awesome. Maci.com, MACI.com. You know, it's interesting, Sally, because I've known you for so long. You know, you're one of the people I want to talk to about, in particular, minority head coach hiring in the NFL, because I've actually seen some of your recent shows where you had Bill Rhoden on, and you guys were talking about that. You know, I feel like the years when there's not a lot of progress in that area, we hear a lot about it. Yeah, I feel like, you know, how many? So Antonio Pierce, Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, we've had four minority coaches, and Dave Canales, obviously, of Latino, Latino background. And so you have four minority coaches that have been hired. There were 8 vacancies. And I think you have to be really impressed with that. And you listen to Bob Kraft. He said that he was very intentional. He wanted to hire an African-American head coach, and that's Gerard Mayo. Now, he feels very comfortable with Gerard Mayo because he played for him, coached under Belichick for all those years. But I think that's high praise when you have someone like Gerard Mayo, who Bill Belichick had to talk into coming into coaching, spoke to his wife and said, look, this guy was born to coach. And then he ended up the Patriots run one of the most complex defenses known to man. Yeah. It confuses quarterbacks. And as one quarterback said, he was seeing ghosts, right? And so if you have been hand-chosen by a Bill Belichick and a Bob Kraft, I think that speaks very highly of you. So we have high expectations for Gerard Mayo. We have high expectations for a lot of these new head coaches who are getting opportunities. But that's a situation where he's coming in and he is filling in behind Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
After 24 years and 6 championships. Big shoes to fill, high expectations, but the opportunity is really what we're talking about, Ross.
It's funny because I was critical of the Patriots in the sense that I feel like I would have interviewed, like, even if I knew I wanted Mayo.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have interviewed other guys, number one, to hear what people outside of the building thought of the Patriots franchise and what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And number two, so that if I eventually hire Mayo, which they probably would, you could say, hey, we talked to Ben Johnson, we talked to Bobby Sloan, but this guy was the best. But to your point, they must feel really strongly about him to hire him like that. But here's my question for you. I feel like we haven't heard that much about the increase in minority hiring. You said it's a positive and a good thing. Do you feel like we hear more about it when we don't have that kind of progress?
I do think it's one of those deals where they say squeaky wheel gets the oil. When things aren't going well,
right?
That's when things get more attention.
Yeah.
Right? When things are going well and progressing, I do think there's people like Bill Roden. There are some people who are great journalists. They are sort of the custodians of truth, if you will. They are going to eventually tell these stories and say, hey, here's where the league is now. Here's the trajectory of increase in minority hiring. Here are the opportunities that have been afforded to young men who have really worked a long time. D'Amico Ryans 1 year ago, and look at how he's done. So along the way, there will be some accounting, right? There will be articles and stories that are going to, I think, be more positive. And so we'll hear those. But you're right. Right now, if the hiring wasn't to the liking of some, I think there's no doubt you would be hearing that a lot more.
You know, I guess I feel like, Sally, we'll really have progress when the Rooney Rule will no longer be necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What I see, I'm curious your opinion on it.
Yeah.
I guess I see some of these teams, and they interviewed minority candidates that I don't think anybody really thought had a great chance to get the job, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how you how you feel about that, and if you think the Rooney Rule is still a real positive.
First of all, these regulatory guidelines, we hear about these in society, and we just want people, might take a more conservative approach. So we don't need any regulations.
Right.
Well, regulations is like a 4-way stop sign. You come to a 4-way intersection in the road, and there's a light that says you have to stop. We're going to control the way that traffic flows through this intersection.
Right.
Because guess what? It's for our own good.
Right.
And if we could be trusted to do right all on our own,
right?
No, we wouldn't need those regulatory guidelines. And that's across every industry, right?
And what it does, Sally, which I really like, is it slows down the process a little.
Yeah.
Which I think has been a positive. I would like to see it even be slower. Like, to me, like Ben Johnson having to have 4 interviews to 2 days before the Lions were playing the Bucs. Like, what are we doing?
That doesn't serve him well.
No.
It doesn't serve the Detroit Lions well. Really, it doesn't serve the teams that are trying to vet him well.
Yeah.
This stuff, it really needs to hold until after those real critical games have been played. Now, if you're going into the Super Bowl, you still have that week off.
Right.
And so you can kind of get it done there, and everyone can kind of jump in there at the same time. But getting back to the Rooney Rule in terms of the necessity for it, I think we've seen that in some cases, because all we're trying to do is just create opportunities, exposure. Some people in their day-to-day lives, they're not exposed to people who are different than them and may do things different than they would, right? And then to sort of broaden that pipeline and offer the exposure, the opportunity to get to know someone, meet someone, the Rooneys. Remember when they met with Mike Tomlin? There was no true intent to go in that direction. Ken Wisenhunt, Russ Grimm were the guys that we thought were locked to get that job.
Can you even imagine, by the way, what Tomlin was like in an interview?
I can. I can.
Hire this guy. I mean,
and that's what we're talking about.
In those settings that it's like, man, that's the guy.
And that's the exposure that we're talking about. And it's not about his charisma as much as it is his command of the language, his ability to lead other young men, be believable. You just heard Art Rooney the second say that his message still resonates with his players. I've been in the room where he's spoken to his players. He can move the room. You and I both know that's a critical component to coaching.
Yeah.
Because you got 53 guys that if you've lost 3 in a row, what are you going to say now, Coach? He seems to always be able to have something to say, but more importantly, he understands the X's and O's of how to put together a scheme to be able to accomplish that. But most of our game, as you well know, it's about motivation, right?
Right.
It's not about how to, it's about want to.
Right.
How bad do you want to get this done? And if you could tap into that as a human resource, then you got your guy.
I think, Sally, you made an awesome point about, it gives them an opportunity to get more comfortable with them. And that's a big reason for Gerard Mayo.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, if you and I didn't go way back and I hadn't known you for a long time, if I had just met you for the first time here, I would be a little bit less comfortable even asking you some of these questions.
Some of these questions, that's
what I mean?
Right. Exactly
but
right.
because I've
right.
known you for so long, we've done shows
we
together.
could go there.
Right.
That's right.
And I say the same thing all the time. Like when I have Booger McFarland or something like that I'm like friends with.
Yeah.
That's a really key component in life. It seems like you'd be unlikely to hire someone that you're not comfortable with on some level, right?
I can share this with you. When I was a player, back then the money wasn't enough to sustain you. And so I was in a management training program. I worked every year in the off season. And it was in a management training program at an insurance firm. And I remember going through training, and we were doing the HR training. I remember we were having dinner with some of our senior executives. And I asked them, I said, look, I felt comfortable that I could ask this question. If I lost my job, I still was playing in the NFL, so I could survive. And I asked him, I said, what is the greatest concern with hiring minorities in the corporate space, right, in the private sector? And he said, that's a really good question. He said, you sure you want to hear this? I said, no, I really would like to know. I said, this is something that we should know. He said, really, people, when they go to hire people, they want to hire people who share the same value systems, who have similar mindsets that they have. Yeah. And typically we go down this road where the people that we have the most in common with, that's who we're most comfortable hiring.
Yeah.
So if, I went to St. Vincent of Mary, and you went to St. Vincent of Mary, I went to that. So now you're a Catholic church. Oh, I pledged this fraternity. You pledged your Sigma Gamma also? Oh, yeah. So you get what I'm saying? So that funnel is narrow. That environment that you're working in, people are all alike, right? Very homogenous. It's just and so when we talk about diversity, the difference, everyone who really understands the growth of this country, it's really our growth. We grew faster than any other country in modern history, simply because we had so many people from so many different places bringing their expertise to how to build, how to grow, right? You had people who built the Great Wall of China, and they built our railroads. And now we're able to expedite and get goods and services from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And now we can grow economically. So we had all these wonderful people with all these wonderful traits and skills. That still works in the workplace. It still works in any other thing that you're trying to grow, trying to achieve or accomplish. And so trying to get out of that mindset of everybody's got to be like me, so now let's go. No, let's get a little uncomfortable, because guess what? They're bringing something to the table. He's bringing something to the table. She is bringing something to the table.
Yeah.
You see?
It's so true, because I have a couple small businesses, and like when I see interns, if they're from where I'm from in Pennsylvania, it's almost like I feel like I kind of already know them or know something about them.
It's easy, too.
It's easy. It's easy.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you also, Sally, I thought Gerard Mayo said something interesting, and you had this on one of your shows, where I want to say maybe, and I've heard this, other people say this recently, Robert Kraft might have said something like, he doesn't see color or he's colorblind or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Gerard said, well, I do see color, because if you don't see color, you can't see racism. And I got to be honest with you, Sally, I didn't know until recently that saying I don't see color is a negative. And can you explain that to me and my listeners?
Yeah, there's some nuance there, because I do believe in the heart and mind of Mr. Kraft, who I've spent a lot of time with. He's pure of heart making that statement.
Yeah, he didn't mean it. Yeah, he didn't.
There's no doubt about that. Now, from Gerard's perspective, he gets the nuance here of saying, no, I need you to see me truly as a black man, but still just feel just as positive and as strong about your decision to hire me. You should not have to whitewash me or make me colorless or take away some of the unique things that those diverse or different things that I bring to the table. Take away those things, and now you're comfortable. So, for instance, and I think he says the same as if someone is disabled. You can't say that I don't recognize your unique challenges, right? I'm still going to hire you, but I don't even recognize the challenges that you go through every day with your unique differences. But okay, I'm going to hire you. No, let's go ahead and recognize those things and still have the confidence and courage to make that decision. And so that's what he's saying. Don't strip me of who I am. See my color and still feel confident and courageous about this decision.
So the last thing I want to bring up with you is something that you referenced. You got to tell me more about some of the other jobs these guys had in the 80s when you were playing the NFL in the offseason. Because I'm like trying to picture the guys that play now. I'm thinking about some of the NFL guys, and I'm trying to think about what their off-season job would be, and I have a tough time even picturing it.
Well, I think on a different level, they can make the investment to create their own job.
Yes,
right. And
yes.
That's what we encourage players to do today. And these times, their players were entrepreneurial. Many of them were starting their own businesses. Like I was a young player, I came to the Cincinnati Bengals. There were two Mexican American players on our team, and they had come from Southern California like I had been. And I really looked up to Max Montoya and Anthony Munoz.
Yeah.
And I walk across the locker room and I said, hey, just want to introduce myself. Just glad to be on the same team with you guys. They were like, you need anything, you let us know. And I look at them as my mentors and really people that I look up to even to this day. Max Montoya had a Mexican restaurant, and you grew up in Los Angeles.
In Cincinnati?
In Cincinnati.
Okay.
So, today people know about taco trucks, and you love these gourmet tacos, but we grew up on that kind of food. Like, and so you go to Cincinnati, you don't expect to find a Mexican restaurant, at least not in the 80s. Now it's become more pervasive. And I said, so I would go to his restaurant. We would go, we have a great time. And I said, oh, Max, this is just great food. So Max had his own business. He then ended up buying into a franchise, that makes sub sandwiches, right? It's called Penn Station. And he owns multiple franchises. So he's done really well in business. And so now we joke, and I said, Max, look at all the Mexican restaurants around Cincinnati now. You had the first Mexican restaurant. And I said, now everyone's selling tacos. I said, and you're selling subs. What's up with that? So it was one of those things where he was ahead of the curve. He was very entrepreneurial. He was an example of what a lot of guys did back then. They didn't necessarily go maybe into the private space because it's hard for people to carve out time.
Right.
As the company was
going to hire you for 5 months or whatever. Right?
Yeah, they hired me for 5 months. They gave me very intense training where I was in there more than 40 hours a week. I was taking exams. As a claims adjuster, you have to pass a real high bar. There's a lot of legal concepts that you have to understand. But I was in there every day doing the work, settling claims, writing checks, and all of those things. And then I'd go back to playing football. Then as soon as football was over, then I'd go into the underwriting department, and I began learning how the underwriting process. And that's when I first became really conscious of data analytics and how it helps us to make better decisions, more informed decisions.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why you pay a different price. Your premiums for your car is different than my premium. And that's the only price that we pay where our prices are different per person, and we don't haggle. We don't go into it trying to negotiate or whatever, because you have unique metrics for that company to say, this is what you're paying. Now, your car might be a Ferrari, right? And if you're 25 years old driving a Ferrari, what's the probability that you'll get into an accident? Very high. So your premiums are going to be very high, right? So I know we came to talk football, but that's this science of data concepts and metrics and measuring predictabilities. These things aren't anything new.
No, I think it's great. Check him out on social media, of course, at Solomon's Wisdom. Has so much things going on. He's got a great Bengals podcast on the Believe Network. You can also go to Macy.com, MACI.com. Sounds good to me. Use my own healthy sales to it's just my right knee. My left knee's pretty good, Solly, but maybe my
That's
right
good.
knee sometime soon. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Really
Always
appreciate
great
it.
to be with you, Ross. Keep
All
up
right.
the great work.
Really appreciate Solly and always have, just like I really appreciate Labatt Blue Lights and always have. Drink them with your friends, family, while you're living life to the power of we. Always enjoy it responsibly. It's delicious beer made by Labatt USA in Buffalo, New York.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, we'll start with Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. He was not at mandatory minicamp because of, quote, an event that was extremely important to him, yet it was unexcused by the team.
I'm going to make this my Labatt take of the week, Jack, just because I think it's the most interesting thing that's happened so far this week. It's presented by Labatt Blue Light, the pristine Canadian Pilsner. Enjoy your beers together so you can live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. At this point, I think it's way more interesting that this is an unexcused absence than it is the fact that Rodgers didn't show up. He was at all the OTAs, so I'm not overly concerned about that aspect of it. But Robert Saleh, the head coach, said he told us about this weeks ago. It was an event that was very, very important to him. I find it beyond intriguing that the Jets just didn't say it was an excused absence. Guys get excused absences from OTAs and minicamps all the time. For the Jets to go out of their way to make an unexcused absence, boy, I'll be very curious to see what this event is. But the Jets are the ones that kind of made this into a mountain out of what might ultimately be a molehill.
Staying in New York, edge rusher Hassan Reddick, as well as Browns wide receiver Amari Cooper, they also declined to attend mandatory minicamp.
So I need to check on this, Jack, but I believe that they can forgive fines for minicamp. If you miss minicamp, it's like $100,000, but they don't have to fine you for that. Whereas for training camp, they have no choice. They have to fine you. So I can understand skipping mandatory minicamp if you're convinced that it'll be forgiven by the team, but I don't understand anybody that ever skips any training camp days because that's money that you just can't get back because that doesn't make sense. I think I'm right about the minicamp, but we got to check on that with my guys like Andrew Brand or Joel Corey or Michael Giannetti from Spotrac, any of those guys. These guys are both having contract issues. Amari Cooper is basically just seeing all these receivers that he thinks he's as good as making a lot more money than him. So he would like the financial security to know he's going to be there for years. He would like a raise. And Hassan Reddick, I said this, Jack, when the Eagles traded him. He's not playing for $14.25 million this year, whatever it is. He's not. I thought the Jets made a fatal mistake by not agreeing to a new contract at that time. He shouldn't play for that much. Guys are getting more than guys that are in his peer group, okay, are getting double or more than double what Reddick is making. He deserves more. He's going to get more. It's just a matter of how much of an issue the Jets want to make out of it. The Eagles didn't want to make that much of an issue out of it. They didn't want this to continue, and so that's why they traded him.
Steelers, they signed head coach Mike Tomlin to a 3-year extension through 2027.
He's a fantastic coach. I understand the frustration and consternation on the part of Steelers fans who haven't had a playoff victory in a long time. I guess I would submit to you, maybe this is a fair criticism of Mike. I think he does more with less, but there have been years where he's had more and he did less. He did less with more. Does that make any sense, Jack? He does more with less, but there were a couple years there, the Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown year, where it was like he did less with more, and I think that's the Steelers fans' frustration as much as anything else.
And Christian McCaffrey, he's going to be on the cover of Madden 25.
It's so interesting to me how big of a deal that is, and congratulations to Christian. I know it is a big deal. Look, we give away Maddens every year, and we'll be giving some away to you guys. It's just always fascinating how big of a deal and how important that is to people. Kudos to him. I know it's big from a marketing and just kind of I don't know. I'd love to hear, like, would you rather be the offensive player of the year in the NFL, or would you rather be on the cover of Madden? For some guys, it's probably actually being on the cover of Madden. For me, it's being on the Fantasy Feast podcast with Joe Dolan every week and being able to play in a best ball draft with you guys, or talking with Greg Cosell on Thursday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Should be epic. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Listen, Father's Day a couple days away. Why haven't you gotten one of these for your dad yet? Absolutely amazing. Plus, I guarantee to send you an autograph for anybody that gets one. myfrontpagestory.com, backofficeschedule.com, humanheadnyc.com, sporticulture.com.